Visit elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life.
Welcome, everyone, to the third District 205 community engagement section. We're delighted to have you back or here for the first time. We started, remember, it was like 94 degrees in August, so we're progressing somehow. My name's John Morrissey, and the co-chair is Cara Fario, right behind me. And we work with a team of about 20 individuals who plan and facilitate these sessions and, go through the documents and try to, make it so we can understand it and that sort of thing. Anyway, if they would raise their hands or stand up, I would appreciate it, and give them a little round of applause for their participation. Several Board of Education members are here as well, and if you want to identify yourself, we would appreciate it. In our first session, you will recall that we did a lot of background information according to where the district stood right now. The last session, we talked about some of the directions that schools can go in terms of education. And this one is particularly exciting because it's about money. So it's our resources. So it's the utilization of resources for maximum student success. And that concept is what the district's working off of. All this information that we gather and collect and go over and present, it's all on our website, Focus 205. You can get, we also have a Twitter account, a Facebook account. There's a verbatim document that is on the website as well that has everything that you have written down that you are concerned about is also on the website. In addition, tonight, you have in your packet a budget at a glance, and that kind of shows you what's been going on in the last, I think, three years in the district. Our calendar, our last meeting, or our scheduled last meeting is next month. So if you can schedule that tonight or make plans to attend, I appreciate it. Time's very tight. We want to be done by 9 o'clock. You want us to be done by 9 o'clock, so we're going to move pretty fast through this. So you won't get all your questions answered. Please document, write down your questions that you have. There's forms on the table for that purpose, and we will collect those and get those answered. People will get back to you and answer them, and you can always get a hold of anybody that's on our committee or helping us with this to get answers for you. And let me thank you for being cordial and receiving a number as you came in and sitting at a designated table. And we appreciate this. It's kind of like school, but that's what they want to do. It helps provide diversity of opinion in each group. So you're not sitting with the same guys and having the same problems or same complaints or anything like that. Now, it is my pleasure to announce the superintendent of our school district, Dr. Dave Moyer, and he will review the findings from our last Focus 205 session. Mr. Moyer.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, thank you, John. At the October 28th Community Engagement Session, Dr. Fitzgerald, Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Teaching, presented on the topic, Tomorrow's Classrooms Today. She celebrated some of the recent successes in Elmhurst District 205, shared some effect-size research on practices that most impact improved student achievement, and shared approaches and programs that are becoming common in high-performing districts. Effect-size research is the primary factor that school improvement decisions in District 205 are based on. During the first work activity, participants were asked to allocate 100 capacity points to the following opportunities to enhance and improve programming for students: all-day kindergarten, advancement via individual determination, AVID, dual language program, inclusive learning environments, increased utilization of instructional coaches, Project Lead the Way, which is what we call related to STEM programming. That's kind of a popular acronym, STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. Systematic interventions and enrichment, and Virtual Enterprises International. Participants also had the opportunity to add initiative areas for the district to consider. Upon averaging the group's responses, the top two educational opportunities that emerged were all-day kindergarten and Project Lead the Way. Participants shared these thoughts about the perceived benefits of all-day kindergarten and Project Lead the Way. Here are some of the key findings from participant feedback during our second community engagement session. The participants also had the opportunity to generate thoughts and suggestions for additional opportunities for improvement or analysis. Some of these are listed here. As mentioned previously, a thorough summary of feedback and commentary from the previous sessions are available online on the Focus 205 website. Tonight, Chris Welton, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations, will present on the topic, Utilization of Resources for Maximum Student Success. I will then briefly discuss some educational implications for future planning. So at this time, I would introduce Mr. Welton.
Thank you. Just by the way of background, I got my degree in public accounting, and right out of college I was an auditor for 8 years at an accounting firm. I was auditing school districts and municipalities, and so I am a CPA, and I'm here to talk about school finance. Just want to make sure everyone's in the right room. I like being called the featured speaker. I've never had that before. It's the first time for me. But my presentation tonight, I'm going to start out with a big picture overview of the budget. And we're going to talk about operating revenues, and then operating expenditures, operating fund balances. Then we're going to get a little bit into non-operating with bonds and debt, and then some future challenges from a financial and a facility perspective, a little bit on just financial stewardship processes and procedures going on in the school district, and then we're going to bring it back to Dr. Moyer to bring it back to talking about, bring it back to an instructional context. So the budget from 30,000 feet, just a big picture view of the budget. On the revenue side, most of our revenues are from property taxes, 84.23, almost $95 million come from property taxes. I know that when I'm budgeting revenues, if I can get the property taxes pretty accurate, I know that my budget is going to be real accurate on the revenue side, because that is 84.23% of the revenues. On the expenditure side, we are a service organization, so we are very much reliant, or our focus of our expenditures is on our staff. And so we are 77.63% on staffing, meaning salaries and benefits. This year, our operating budget, we have $112,444,000 in revenues, which 84.23% being property taxes. And then on expenditures, we have $112,279,338 on the expenditure side. So we end up with just a little bit more than a break even in this year's budget with the annual surplus of $164,662. So on the revenue side, this shows a comparison of Elmhurst School District 205 to the state average, which this shows that we are much more reliant on local dollars, meaning property taxes and other local fees, compared to the state, which has 66%. And our state funding is 6.42%, and federal 3.14%. This is mainly caused by the property tax wealth in the district. The Elmhurst having more property tax wealth and the demographics of compared to the state average. We have more detail. We didn't want to put up all the numbers in the slides, but in the budget at a glance, on page 6, there's a more detailed breakdown of the revenues if you wanted to see a little more detail on that. But you would see in there that student fees are $1,349,610. So 1.2% of our operating budget revenues is student fees. Our property tax breakdown is mostly operational taxes. 90% of our property taxes are operational taxes. And my presentation tonight is mostly focused on the operational side of the district. But we do have some non-operating in the debt or the bond and interest that we receive property taxes and we pay for those bonds. Those bonds are from, we had a referendum back in March of 2000 that passed a $78 million referendum in 2000. These funds, in addition to Build Illinois and other state funds, were used for the York projects and mostly the multi-purpose rooms at Edison, Emerson, Fisher, Jackson, and Jefferson. And then in March of 2006, we had another referendum which led to the issuing of $54.15 million in bonds. These funds were used for additions at Field and Lincoln, Jefferson and Edison and Emerson and Fisher and Jackson and Bryan and Churchville and Sandburg. We remodeled Hawthorne and put an addition there. We did some air conditioning at Bryan, some detention and parking at Fisher, additions and remodeling at Emerson. We remodeled the middle school food labs. We did a Bryan parking lot and Sandburg hall lockers. But I just wanted to touch on, that's the portion, those debt and those bonds were issued for those large capital projects that we did back a few years. But our property tax base, our EAV, is primarily residential property. 83.26% of our EAV, which is equalized assessed valuation, which kind of measures the value of the property. So we are primarily residential. We have about 10% commercial and 7% industrial. A higher percentage in commercial and industrial is preferred because it takes some of the burden away from residential taxpayers, but our district is primarily residential. The Consumer Price Index it measures the changes, it is basically a measure of inflation, but it compares the price of a market basket of consumer goods. And our property taxes are limited to that increase. And as you can see, recently we've had a very low consumer price index with the 1.7 in 2012, 1.5 in 2013, and 0.8 in 2014. That, and right now, year over year in September, the CPI is at 0%. These are historical low amounts for CPI. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the tax cap. The tax cap limits the increases in operating taxes to the consumer price index, regardless of the valuation of the property. On the right diagram, that's what we've kind of been in the past 7 years. The existing EAV was going down, and the tax rates were going up. This year, and I guess prior to 2007, EAV was going up. Property values were going up at that time, and they are again now in 2015. And what that does is you have decreasing tax rates with the current tax cap. The tax cap, this is just a CPI example of, with the tax cap, the tax extensions build on the prior year. And so you're limited to a CPI, in this example, of 1.5% for existing taxpayers, existing property is your limit for operating taxes, is 1.5%, so the new levy or new extension would be 101.5 million. This is a comparison of 2014 tax rates to our comparable unit school districts, where we are third lowest amongst the comparison group at $5.48. This diagram shows state revenues and shows that over time our state revenues have been very flat. And the black line is comparing, that's our enrollment increases. The current year shows the bar going down with the financial crisis going on in the state of Illinois. We have budgeted for three quarterly payments from the state. They are known for being delinquent. A few years back, they were two quarters behind. This past year, they came back to 1 quarter behind, and we are projecting now to end the school year 2 quarters behind. So just to summarize revenues, on the revenue side, Elmhurst School District is primarily property taxes, 84.23%. Our property tax increases are limited to inflation or the CPI, and the CPI is averaged 1.33% over the last 3 years, and is currently at 0%. State funding, as I'm sure you've seen in the news, the state is in a bit of a financial crisis, and they have not passed a budget. Their funding is uncertain. We're expecting delinquent payments, and so with all of that, we basically overall revenues are flat or maybe increasing just a little bit. On the expenditure side, as I said, we're mostly staffing, but we wanted to show you a little bit about the operating funds, expenditures by fund, where almost all of our expenditures are in the education fund, 84%. We have about 9% In the operations and maintenance fund, that funds our facilities, our cleaning and maintenance, and our custodians, electricity. All of our facility costs are in the operation and maintenance fund. Transportation fund covers our busing, and that's 4.19%. And then in the IMRF and Social Security fund, those are retirement funds for the non-certified staff, well, and certified staff as far as Medicare is concerned. And as far as expenditures by type, we talked already about salaries and benefits, which are 63.56 salaries, 14.07% benefits. Purchase services, this is 12.36%. That's things like transportation. We also have a nursing contract with Elmhurst Hospital, but primarily staffing. Supplies and materials, we generally keep that in the budget flat from year to year. But our budget is focused on instruction. And instruction is our top priority. And as you can see in this chart, the instruction is increasing. The expenditures dedicated to instruction is increasing. The increase here, you can see instructional support had to do with the mobile learning initiative and with the influx of technology in the school district. We increased our instructional support. Enrollment projections. Our staffing is largely driven by our enrollment projections and the needs of our students. And in this slide, you can see that we've had steadily increasing enrollments in the school district, and we're projecting for that trend to continue. Right now, we have a bit of a bubble in grades, or larger classes in grades 6, 7, 8, and 10. And so those large classes will result in larger high school classes coming up. So we're expecting York to grow over the next few years. And right now, Bryan Middle School is expected to continue to grow, but we're at a peak in our middle schools right now because Sandburg and Churchville are both projected to start decreasing a little bit. So this chart is a national study on students likely to struggle, and this chart is from 2000 to 2010, and these percentages are percentages of growth, and so so it shows that nationwide we've had growth in students on free and reduced lunch, so low-income students. We've had growth nationwide in English language learners, and we've had growth in students with disabilities. And these trends that will continue or have continued to the current day, and they are illustrated here, and they're definitely happening similarly in Elmhurst School District. Where here we're showing English language learners. We had 208 English language learner students in 2003, where we have 575 currently in 2015. And our percent low income in Elmhurst School District was 2.9% back in 2003 and has risen all the way to 18.5% in 2015. And all of those increases in enrollment and in increasing in the needs of our students in our demographics has led to an increase in staffing and an increase in the number of teachers. Back in 2011, 12, and 13, we were in a budget reduction, 3 years of significant budget cuts, and that kept the number of teachers lower. But in the last 3 years, we've had maintenance budgets, but we've had to add staff to meet the needs of our enrollment and the needs of our students. And then in 2015, we added discretionary staff, which was for instructional technology coaches. Another expenditure for the district, a large expenditure in benefits, is health insurance and in health care. And this is a national chart showing cost of health care. And similarly, we are concerned about health insurance increases. We had a very good run of health claims with our staff in the district, where we had 4 years in our PPO plan where we had 0% premium increases. But the last 2 years, that has turned around. And last year, for the 2014-15 school year, we had a 7.95% increase in our PPO plan. And most of our staff, about 80%, I believe, are in our PPO plan. That went up 7.95 in 14-15, and in the current year, it went up 18.84%. And that obviously is significant when your revenues are very flat. So on the expenditure side, what I've talked about here is the district is primarily salary and benefits, 77.63%. We're projecting, we've had steady increasing enrollment. The students likely to struggle, which require additional staffing, is increasing nationwide and in District 205. And health insurance is increasing. Trend is currently at 8%. Fund balances. I want to talk a little bit about fund balances. This shows how our fund balances fluctuate during the school year. As I've already talked about, our property taxes being 84% of our revenues, and we receive those property taxes in 2 large payments. We receive one payment in September, and you can see that that's when our fund balances are the highest. And then we get another payment in June. Our expenditures are pretty steady throughout the year, but largely our expenditures are from the end of August to the beginning of June, and then we have a little bit down in July and the beginning of August. But the result is this cash flow pattern that we have every year, where May 31st is our cash flow low point. A lot of times it's talked about our fund balances at June 30th, which is right after we get our June payment of property taxes. So it would be a better measuring point would be to look at what our fund balances are in May. When fund balances get tight, a lot of times school districts will have to borrow to pay operating bills in April and May at the cash flow low point. And they do that through what's called tax anticipation warrants. And that tends to compound the problem of expenditures outpacing revenues, and it's a bad financial practice to get into. And so you want to have enough fund balance so that in May you don't get into a spot where you need to borrow to pay operating bills. District 205, over the past 5 years, has done a really good job of managing their budgets and their finances, and our fund balances have actually grown over the past 5 years. Part of what's helped contribute to the positive growth in fund balances is we had those severe budget cuts back in 2011, 12, and 13, with the EOKT cuts being the middle year, the 2012 year. These were painful cuts, but it helped mitigate those expenditure increases that I've been talking about. We were fortunate, as I've talked about, in healthcare claims, and we had those 0% increases in our PPO plans for 4 straight years. And in addition to that, we also had a premium holiday that saved $800,000. Also, we had a significant number of retirements, which helped lower the salaries with younger, lower staff when the retirees would come off at the higher level of the pay scale. We also had in that 2004, we had a TIF-4 intergovernmental agreement the last few years, which resulted in a TIF-2 surplus distribution that was $1.5 million. That also contributed to the increase in the fund balance. Another thing that helped was that we had a new hospital, Elmhurst Hospital, that was built at the south end of the school district near Roosevelt Road, which resulted in some new construction EAV. The new construction is exempt from the tax cap, and that helped the school district to the tune of $2.5 million. All of these things have helped us to come to our current position of stable fund balances, which show a 46.47 fund balance in June 2015. So the benefit of having those adequate fund balances is, as I've talked about, avoiding the short-term borrowing, but it also provides a margin of safety to absorb some future negative financial changes, which we may not be able to avoid. Some of those changes include the property tax freeze that is currently being proposed in the legislature, pension cost shift. We've looked at the last few years. There was a state funding redistribution discussion in the Springfield, discussed by the legislature, Senate Bill 16 and Senate Bill 1. We're also going to be facing the Cadillac tax through the Affordable Care Act, the state funding uncertainty with delinquent payments and prorating payments, and also we need to keep our facilities maintained. So those are just some of the, and I'm going to go into a little more detail about each of those, but the adequate fund balance helps provide a margin of safety to absorb those future negative financial changes. The debt and bonds, this is the non-operating side of things that I talked a little bit about earlier about. The district maintains a strong Standards & Poor's AA+ bond rating. Standards & Poor issued the following in the report about our AA+. They talked about participating in the deep and diverse Chicago metropolitan area. The district has very strong income levels and extremely strong market values per capita, very strong reserves and good financial management practices, and a moderate overall debt burden. And this strong credit rating has translated into lower interest rates and could be low interest rates when issuing future debt, but we've done some refundings, and that the strong rating has helped the district to save interest in the long term. This just shows a summary of the savings that we've achieved over refundings the past 5 years, showing a total savings to taxpayers of $12.6 million. Some of this savings, similar to refinancing your house, the way these refundings were structured was to cut off or to eliminate some of the debt out in the furthest years, 2023, 2024, and 2025. So the interest savings resulted in lower debt out further. But the payment plan, or the payment schedule that we have here, is the same one that was approved by the voters in the 2006 referendum. So some challenges, national, state, and local, some financial and facility type changes, or challenges. The property tax freeze. We've heard a lot of discussion about a property tax freeze. This idea that's been talked about in the legislature, our lobbyist group believes that this has a lot of potential, and it's a very much a concern for the school district. It might be welcomed by some taxpayers, but for the school district, this is a concern. Our property tax, the CPI 1.5% increase is worth about $1,429,000, and if it's 2 years, we're looking at 2 of those, so that could be $3 million. And that would not only be the loss of that money, but that money compounded, as I talked about before, the property taxes each year builds on itself. So we would not only lose those dollars, but the compounding effect of those dollars. The pension cost shift from the state to local school districts has been talked about a lot in recent years. This shift is talking about shifting the normal cost from the state to the school district at 8%, and that is currently showed at $4.4 million. A lot of the lobbyist groups, when they talk about this bill, they talk about a phase-in, that phasing this in over 4 to 16 years. So obviously our lobbyists would try and get that bill to be phased in over a longer term. But whenever they talk about the pension cost shift bill, they also talk about the state funding distribution bills, because a lot of the districts downstate and south of I-80, those school districts could not afford or would really be in trouble if the pension cost shift happened. Well, so they pair it with a state funding distribution, which would take money away from the Collier County and suburban school districts and shift it to districts across the state. So if we had a pension cost shift and a state funding distribution like Senate Bill 16 or Senate Bill 1, this would really be a double whammy to School District 205 and suburban school districts. But Senate Bill 16 for Elmhurst School District 205 would have taken $4.5 million away from Elmhurst School District, and Senate Bill 1 would have been $4.7 million, and that money would have been redistributed to downstate school districts and other school districts that didn't have as much property tax wealth. Another concern is the Affordable Care Act. The Cadillac tax in 2018 currently is projected to be $600,000 to Elmhurst School District 205. And then the last thing is, we've talked about before, just the uncertainty of state funding and the delinquent payments by the state, where 2 quarters, if they finish 6 months behind, would be $2.9 million for District 205. Some of the facility challenges that we've talked about. Lincoln Elementary is our oldest building, and it has a long list of issues, and I know we're going to talk more about facilities at session number 4, but just a little bit on it. Lincoln has issues with ADA compliance because of their old heating and air conditioning system and the boiler system, the way it's laid out in the building. They have a lot of trouble with classroom temperature in the classrooms. Just the building layout, the way it's laid out with a lot of different elevation changes. It's not your normal layout of a school district. It has a lot of concerns at Lincoln, and I think they're going to talk a lot more about that at the next session. As far as capacity of our buildings, right now our biggest concern is field. You might know that we had the old Elmhurst Hospital near North Avenue was knocked down, and they're starting to build, or they're building 56 new houses in that area. So there is that the students related to that development really haven't come into our district yet, and so it's kind of projection or estimation of, we're not sure exactly how many students we're going to have coming in from those new houses at Field, but Field's already getting close to capacity, and with projections, we definitely think it's going to get to be very tight at Field over the next 5 years. The other buildings, Bryan might get a little bit tight, but we think we have enough capacity over the next 5 years. York, with those big classes coming into York over, I think we're projecting it to peak in 2020 with about 2,800 to 2,900 students at York. It's going to be a little tight, and definitely the room utilization is going to need to change at York. So that's some concerns. Also, future challenges, future-ready classrooms that Michelle talked a little bit about, and I know in session 4 they're going to talk about more. We really don't, our maintenance projects that we do every summer are really just maintenance. We're not looking at future-ready classrooms when we do any of that. That's just a future, something out there to think about, but we're not working in that direction. We're just maintaining our facilities. Security is another thing we've been working on. We've tried to put in safety vestibules in most of our buildings where possible. Some buildings it would take a larger scale renovation based on where the main entrance is in relation to the main office. Some buildings we can't, it would be a larger renovation. But we follow a rule of thumb with facilities with our summer maintenance projects we have 1.5 million square feet of buildings, so we try to maintain our buildings every year with $1.5 million in maintenance projects on roofs and paving. Just things, masonry like tuck pointing. We do projects like that every year to keep our maintenance, our buildings just maintained, and we feel that is a prudent, and it would be not fiscally responsible to not continue to maintain our buildings every summer. Here we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the financial management, financial stewardship procedures that we have in the school district. we do enrollment projections every year in October so that we are preparing for future enrollment growth and that sort of thing for our facilities. So we're ready for staffing purposes and for facility purposes. We do PMA is an outside organization, comes in and does 5-year projections every year. So we know what's coming down the pike, what we're planning, we're projecting for what might be coming down the pike. I know that this year we're going to have to do several different scenarios with the different financial challenges that we have coming up. Every month, the board looks at, we do budget to actual variances in the finance committee and at the board meetings, those are being monitored. As I talked about, we do annual maintenance on our projects. It's best to keep up with that every year or it will cost more in the long term to not keep up with facility maintenance. And finally, we also have, we are regularly looking for bond interest savings for the taxpayers to keep those, to use our AA+ rating in order to get lower interest rates for bonds. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moyer to bring it back to more of an instructional context.
Or you can either way. All right, thanks, Chris. So as we've seen, the Elmhurst District 205 Board of Education and Administration have been good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. In earlier presentations, we saw that there have been many positive achievement trends in Elmhurst. We also learned that there are challenges at the state and local level that could significantly impact the district. Previous presentations have pointed to the importance of strong public schools to the overall health of the community, and this strength directly corresponds with property values, and maintaining a strong EAV in the community ensures a tax base that can support the quality of life that people desire. It's my belief that Elmhurst must be proactive and not reactive in preserving the strength and enhancing the strength of its public schools. We've seen the research about the practices that have the greatest impact on improving achievement and approaches that many suburban districts have taken in recent years to ensure future-ready graduates. We've learned that Elmhurst, like most districts nationally, is facing a variety of educational challenges related to poverty and diverse learning populations. Many districts have elected to add staff to address these contemporary educational challenges. Tonight we saw that Elmhurst has added 84 full-time equivalent teachers since 2009. Nationally, anywhere from a third to half of staff increases have not been certified teachers, but instead support staff. In Illinois, the per-pupil funding level is $2,000 below the recommended amount, has not increased since 2008, and has been prorated at a lesser amount for the past 4 years. The increased competition for social resources, due in large part to an aging demographic combined with stagnant economy, all but ensure that there will be little, if any, new money in the system for the foreseeable future. Increased expectations for achievement combined with declining resources is what many would consider a dilemma. Has the traditional response from schools to add staff positively impacted achievement? Graduation rates in the United States are at a record high, but scores on most standardized measures of achievement have been relatively flat and lag behind many other industrialized countries, as illustrated here by the PISA, Program for International Student Assessment, test results in math. Now, these tests only measure one type of intelligence, and the United States is unique in its attempt to educate all students and the diversity it serves, so they must be taken in proper context. Still, the United States averages more minutes of instruction annually than any other industrialized country except for Australia, and this graphic shows that, at least in this instance, it spends more relative to its performance than any other tested country. So what if we've gotten it wrong? What if we've poured too much money into standardized testing when that is not the way to drive improvement, and at the same time worked against the country's greatest strength, its creativity? What if we've made a faulty assumption that adding staff was the answer when in fact it isn't? What if instead we would have poured the equivalent amount of money into helping our existing staff improve its ability to assess rather than test and grade, to engage students rather than celebrate compliance? The challenge, as I see it, is to reallocate resources consistent with effect-size research, the meta-analysis research we talked about last time, and the right drivers for improvement. I would assert that reallocating existing resources would allow for Elmhurst to support most of its priorities, included many new enhancements. This approach turns a dilemma into an opportunity. Earlier, Mr. Welton presented the percentage of district expenditures related to personnel. This is not unique to Elmhurst. The education fund accounts for 80% of most school district budgets, and 80% of that is typically salary and benefits. Because so many of the other district expenses are fixed, staffing is one of the only areas in which districts have some measure of flexibility in their allocation decisions. The slide from a previous presentation shows that since 2009, the district has increased its staff 10.6%, though its enrollment has increased just 3.9%. When adjusted to account for this year's staffing numbers, the percent increase of staff would be greater and the gap between the two lines more pronounced. Some of these increases were due to factors described earlier, such as poverty and the increasingly complex learning needs of students. But much of it has been a conscious choice. The reality is, as I said in my initial presentation, this trend is unsustainable. Elmhurst has the third lowest pupil-teacher ratio among its comparison districts at the elementary level and the lowest at the secondary level, despite the fact that class size has a negligible impact on student learning. As demonstrated in last month's presentation, class size did not come close to making the cut of practices that most positively impact learning. This slide shows the difference between Elmhurst's target level for staffing in grades K2 and 3-5 and its actual staffing for the 2015-16 school year. If Elmhurst staffed at its target levels, note, not increased its target levels, simply staffed to it, it would have the ability to reallocate approximately $2 million annually to its achievement priorities and create sustainability in its long-range budget planning. This example includes no analysis of other district practices or programming or staffing at the secondary grade levels. With a creative approach, Elmhurst can avoid conversations about cuts and consider enhancements. However, it must have the courage to be creative and think in terms of reallocation. It can avoid the classic either-or thinking trap with a both-and mindset. However, this might look a little bit different than it did when most of us were in school. And it might take the courage for us as a community to consider these options in our long-range planning process. Thank you.
Okay, are you all awake? That was a lot. Okay, now we actually get to work, and you can, once we start the activity, if you want to get up and get some water and a snack and start thinking about what you've heard, you can do that. So first of all, I want you to look at the work activity that's in your folder. I'm going to take a few minutes and explain what we're going to do, and then I'm going to let you loose to do it. And the first thing I want you to pull out is the sheet that looks like this, and it says Task Educational Priorities Worksheet. We have two tasks for you to do tonight. One is individual, and one will be done as a group. Okay? All right. So the first thing in your group you will do, which if you come to the other sessions, you know this is the format, you want to select a recorder and a facilitator in your group. The recorder is responsible for completing the information requested on the official sheet. The official sheet is in the center of your table. It has a label on it, I believe, and I think it has red lettering on the label, and that will be collected at the end of the night. Okay? So the recorder will take the notes on there. The facilitator will facilitate the discussion. They need to keep the group focused, keep everyone on task, keep the time if needed, and then they will report the group's information to the larger group if time permits. All right. A couple notes about the small group worksheets. Please make sure the information recorded on the group's worksheet reflects everyone as best you can, and not just the opinion of one person in your group. And try to monitor your time. I will be your timekeeper just so you can finish the activities. And then lastly, at the end of the session, we will collect all of the individual worksheets and also the larger poster size sheet as well. Okay. All right, task 1, educational priorities worksheet. This one you will have about 10 minutes to work on your own. Take a look at this sheet. It says district, elementary, middle school, and high school. On this are various educational priorities in the district. All-day kindergarten is on there, and Project Lead the Way, which may look new to you. They emerged from the last session as things that community members thought were important and the district should put research into. So if you're not sure what those things are, there's a sheet in your folder that explains details about all-day kindergarten and Project Lead the Way, so you can have a little more detail about that. Then look at all of these on the list. With the exception of Project Lead the Way and All-Day Kindergarten, all the other programs are currently being provided to students in District 205. So nothing is new. The question for you to look at is, looking at all these things, what do you feel are the top 5 most important? So it doesn't mean that you're giving up the others, but what do you think is the most important? It's just like your home budget where you go, we want to go on vacations. We're going to save a little money on groceries and try to save for a vacation. What do you think are your most top priorities that you would like to see the district put its resources in? Okay? Not either or, just your greatest focus. Okay? So you're going to have 10 minutes to do that individually, and then you're going to work as a group. So task 2, is, as a group, you will review each person's priorities and use that as a guide to determine District 205's strengths, challenges, and then as a group, come up with your 5 areas of greatest focus. So you will still get your individual sheet collected, but you also have to come up with the 5 top priorities as a group. So there might be a little negotiation needed. Okay? So you will have, you will have 10 minutes to do the individual activity, and then I will tell you 10 minutes is up, and then you have 30 minutes or so to finish the big poster in the middle of your table. Okay? All right. With that, you can start the individual worksheet, get some water, get a snack, and I'll come back in 10 minutes and have you move on to the group activity. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you have to stop. So what we are going to ask you to do is your facilitator, I think, or recorder, what did I say? Whoever, is going to give one strength, one challenge, and the number one priority of your group. So strength, challenge, number one priority, okay? And we are hoping to get to everybody, so we're gonna ask that you really be brief, okay? So we'll have a microphone on each side of the room, and we'll start here in a minute.
Okay, table 17. We are one of the strengths that we all agreed on is that the money has been managed well here at Elmhurst. We like that. And the challenges we're concerned about the pension cost shift. And then as far as our priority, number one was Project Lead the Way for the high school.
Our strength that we put down is we've been very forward thinking on debt, on paying it down so we can get lower interest rates, and also keeping our AA+ rating.
Thank you.
And we're appreciative of that, so thank you. And then the number one challenge we would say is the aging infrastructure. And then the highest priority we saw from the educational standpoint would be the Project Lead the Way from middle school. That's one thing that we all agreed with at our table.
All right, thank you.
What our group said, the strength of our district currently is the borrowing rate. And we would like to see take advantage more on making gains on that money that we invest. And the biggest challenge is essentially not getting any funding from the state. Based on those slides, we're probably about $5 million, if not more, in the hole. So how are we going to course correct that before, with the property taxes coming in basically flat over the next few years? And our number one educational priority, in our opinion, is the rigorous middle school curriculum, because we feel like middle school of today is kind of like high school was of yesterday, and we need to start our students out with good habits early on and set the stage for them going into high school.
As we look at strengths, we see Elmhurst has high fund balances, basically a balanced budget. We have new houses being built here, which should increase some property taxes. The challenges we see is creative ways to keep finances. What we looked at is the priorities. We saw facilities is very important because some of the facilities, have flooding in the basement and some other things, and a good environment both supports the students, and it also will attract better teachers and just create an environment for learning. Teacher quality and support is very important. Statistics continually show relationships between student success and the quality of the leaders, so we think we definitely want good teachers. And then we kind of went off a little bit on the side and said, well, what is it going to take for our students really to be successful in life? And we think it's maybe not all their core skills academically, but how they interact with their peers and what their leadership ability is. So we really think focusing on extracurricular activities and how they interact together really is going to give them the skills to be successful in the world.
Hi, under strengths, our number one was good current and historical financial management, because quite frankly, if you do that right consistently, a lot of your other problems will be more manageable when they come up. Under challenges, we covered a lot of ground in this area, but we would second the last statement around facilities. There's a few, I think, that are in pretty dire need of some extra investment. And then with regards to priorities, our number one vote was for teacher quality and support. And again, thematically consistent with the first strength is if you don't get teacher quality and support right, everything else is going to be harder. So you can have all the extracurriculars you want, but if your teachers aren't leading students and teaching them well, then, what are you really doing?
We had a lot of strengths, but I'll say our number one strength was our low reliance on state funding, because we've been able to keep our budget in check without getting as much state funding as maybe other districts. And our challenges, it probably was a 2-to-1 ratio down there, but Probably one of our biggest challenges, I think, is just our inability to get the money from the state, and just being a state of Illinois school district seems to be a #1 challenge today. And we rated teacher quality and support as our #1 priority.
So the strength of the district is that we have maintained and balanced a budget, and we have a strong community tax base that supports our education. The big challenge would be to deal with a budget while the state is decreasing its educational funds, as well as trying to improve our facilities and make them not only 21st but 20th century standards, right? So our priorities, the #1 was all-day kindergarten, and I think that's been a theme throughout all 3 sessions. So,
our top strength was that the money does come from property taxes and not from the state. One of our challenges was the changing demographics of students and how to help them succeed will increase costs. And as far as our priorities, I'm not even going to say, because we had a really hard time coming up with even #1.
We thought that the greatest strength was that there was a surplus of funds even with staff additions. We felt that the biggest challenges were SB1, the redistributing of funding, and also the amount of new students coming in, for example, the old hospital development, and possibly low-income students and how that'll affect us. Our #1 was teacher quality and support, because all the rest cannot happen effectively and efficiently without teachers who are constantly learning and of high quality.
In terms of strength, we agreed with everyone, and one of the other things we said was that we have a highly invested community. They're paying their taxes, they're participating in forums like this, and are really interested in students' education and performance. A weakness is that we don't have a weak commercial and industry tax base. We don't have a lot to collect from, and possibly, and a challenge being figuring out how to get some outside funding from maybe some community members that work for places, or have connections to maybe some funding that can help us fund new programs. A priority for us was, our #1 was teacher quality.
Pretty similar to what folks have said so far. Our #1 strength we saw was what a great financial position we actually are in as a district and how long we've been in that position. And then biggest challenge, probably because we had a lot of Lincoln and Field families over here, was school facilities. Was our biggest challenge. And then as far as priorities, we had a lot of good discussion. Our #1 priority was balanced class size, followed closely by modernizing facilities, so kind of a similar theme.
For strengths, our table talked about historic financial health that the district has. For the greatest challenge we had, we're actually questioning the future funding numbers, we find questionable, especially with the property tax being reported as being fixed. And that's mainly because we've all received our new assessments for our homes. And even though the property tax rate might be fixed, the assessments are up, which means the income coming in from property tax will be up as well. We would like to see that reflected in the numbers better in the future. There's also 56 new homes in Elmhurst where the hospital was, and there's a lot of new construction in town, so the property tax rates are definitely not fixed in this town. For our priorities, we had staffing quality as #1, Project Lead the Way, STEM, all-day kindergarten, actually not #1, we didn't rank them, all-day kindergarten, comprehensive elective course offerings, and balanced class sizes. Thanks.
We basically had a lot of the same strengths as what we've heard. One thing we did list was that our community has a history of being very supportive with 2 referendums just in 2006 and 2010. So we saw that as a strength of our community. A challenge, again, many of the same things. I think for us, just finding revenue in order to improve our facilities. Where is that going to come from? That's a difficult challenge. And then we also listed teacher quality and support as our priority. Most important aspect of learning is the effectiveness of the teacher. And so you can have all the bells and whistles, but if you don't have a good teacher, it's not going to be as effective.
Hello. This is what we came across in table 39A and 39B. For 39A, in the strengths, we thought that somehow the budget is being controlled even in the lowest points. And for the table B, the District 205 is doing a good job administering the budget. The academics is been staying in the good students, even with the budget. For the challenge, in table A, we came across to organize, maybe find funds somewhere, more money somewhere else, like organize events with clear objectives that will profit, and then those profits will go directly to increase the fund. Like we had some suggestions, like a gala night, concerts, garage sales, festivals, and another suggestion we had was creating a committee or a group that will obtain funds, going and knocking on doors like foundations or asking for grants that will bring money to the fund. And for table B, it's really similar also, looking different ways to obtain money for the district. Ideas like fundraising in the community, more organization, discussion of the pension, and the budget will continue to support our students. For table A, and in the priorities, we had the discussion that the number one will be having a more rigorous core curriculum, because we want to elevate more the academic level. The number two was to increase technology, because we don't want to be left behind. For number three, we want better safety and security systems for our children, because we are in an era of more violence. Number four, we want college equivalent courses, because we want our children going to university more prepared with advanced credits. And for number five, the priority here was a more comprehensive curriculum, or map the learning goals, be more unified and transparency, more communication with the parents, because we are quite confused. And for the table B, they want upgraded safety and security like the first priority, and then all-day kindergarten like the second one, and teacher quality maintenance for the third priority. Thank you.
Hi. My group, we had some really great discussions. We felt that the district did a very good job having, in the whole community, contributing to help pay for all the wonderful things that we have in our district. And also that our board did a great job balancing the budget. Some of our challenges that have already been mentioned are facility upgrades, especially at Lincoln, and the ability to maintain quality with growth in future populations at Field. Our number one priority was all-day kindergarten. For our table, we felt that children who attended all-day kindergarten would need less interventions in the long run, which would eventually save the district money.